Got it? No? Give me a second. Sorry. Am I on now? You sure? You positive? Absolutely positive? No? All right. Well, church, it is always an honor and a privilege to be up here to speak the word. And I always want to say thank you to Pastor Castrati and also the elders for allowing me this opportunity to speak. And, you know, as I was watching you guys this morning up here at the platform, some of you guys looked like you had a whole spiritual adventure already. Some of you guys floated in like you already had worship, prayer, and a bonus devotional. And some of you looked like you guys just survived a Category 5 storm. And some of you carried children who ended up transforming into 42-pound emotional noodles. And then there is some of you that whispered, "Lord, I'm here. Don't ask me for anything else until after the closing song." In church, and I know some of you just didn't fight a busy morning. You fought discouragement. You fought exhaustion. And you had that quiet voice that was whispering in your mind, "Just stay home." But yet you showed up. And church, this is the place where God meets the joyful, where God meets the tired, where God meets the hurting, meets the hopeful. And if you're in this crowd like I am, where you showed up because someone promised you lunch afterwards. And church, the special music that we just heard, "Find Us Faithful," that song and the words that was in it doesn't just sit in the air. It sits on your chest. Because it reminds us that faith isn't just something we practice. It's something we pass on. It's a trail that we leave behind us. It's footsteps someone else will walk in. It is a legacy that someone else will inherit. And if we are being honest, songs like that make us reflect a little deeper than we planned to this morning. These kind of songs make us ask, "Lord, what kind of faith am I actually living? What kind of faith am I handing down? What kind of faith would someone see if they followed my footsteps this week?" And that question, that longing to be found faithful, leads us straight into the story we are going to look at today. Because in Matthew 8, we meet a man whose faith was so real, was so humble, so trusting, so alive, that Jesus himself said, that right there, that's what faith looks like. But before we get to him, I need to have a little confession. There were moments in my week that I do not feel like a spiritual giant. Moments when I'm not exactly modeling the level of faithfulness I need to show. Moments when I'm just trying to survive middle school chaos. And church, one of those moments happened this week. A moment that made me question reality, my calling, and whether the universe glitched for a second. So Thursday morning, I was just sipping my coffee that tasted different. It's like the beans of the coffee were questioning their own identity. And my students looked like they were running on 3% battery life. Then I have that one student that comes into the classroom with so much energy, where I'm over here like, "Please, don't come up to my desk right now." But the student did. The student comes up to me saying, Mr. Matias, guess what? What? I finished my homework early. In my mind, I was like, come again? What did you just say? Did you say early? As in before the due date? As in voluntarily? At that moment, I didn't know if I should celebrate, or do I need to call the parent, or to check to see if that student had been replaced by a clone. I really didn't know. But there he was, standing at my desk with a big old smile on his face, holding a completed assignment like it was a peace treaty. But it's moments like those where it reminds me that people can surprise you. And in Matthew 8, something does happen. And it's something that should make us sit up straight. What is that? Someone actually surprises Jesus. Think about that. Someone actually surprised Jesus. You know, Jesus, the one who knows every thought before it forms. You know, the man who knows everything, who was there at creation. But then he meets a man that makes him stop and turn and say, I have not seen anything like this. What kind of person can amaze Jesus? What kind of person could surprise him? The easy answer is no one should, right? No one should. But yet here in Matthew 8, we see that. And it's an unlikely person that surprises Jesus. And it's the last person you would expect to understand and surprise who Jesus is. And that, my friends, is the Roman centurion. So today, we are going to look at this person. We're going to look at the kind of faith that amazed Jesus. We're going to see and understand what this centurion did that we often miss. And lastly, how can we live with that kind of faith? So let's begin. First of all, we need to understand who this Roman centurion was. Now, a centurion wasn't just your regular mall cop with a sword. He wasn't just a rookie with a helmet and full of enthusiasm. He was the backbone of the Roman military, commanding roughly about 100 soldiers. He was tasked with enforcing Roman law, and he represented Romans' power. There he was, stationed at a village. And let's just say it's a village that doesn't send Rome Christmas cards. Because normally Roman officers in Jewish towns was about as welcome as a pop quiz on a Monday morning. But however, we see with the centurion, he was different. And when we look in the book of Luke, it tells us that he was well liked by the elders. And that is basically the spiritual equivalent of saying, my students love pop quizzes. It just doesn't happen. But it did, because this centurion earned their respect. How did he do it? He cared for the people. He treated people with dignity. And he even used his own resources to build a temple. That wasn't normal. This wasn't expected. And you go scratching your head, this was not how the story was supposed to go. But then this centurion does three things that reveals his heart. The first thing he did was he showed humility, where he comes to Jesus himself. He doesn't send a soldier. He doesn't send a messenger. He comes personally. In church, humility always walks towards Jesus. The second thing he does is he showed compassion. When he approached Jesus, he was not coming for himself. He was coming for someone else. He's not there for a blessing. He's not there asking for a miracle that he can brag about. But he comes for a servant. A servant, in that society, they treat them as disposable. But he goes to Jesus asking for help. And church, if that is not compassion, if that is not love, I don't know what it is. Last thing he does is he calls Jesus Lord. Can you believe that? A Roman officer calling Jesus Lord. It's shocking. It's so unexpected. And it means something deeper is happening. And I come to wonder how many of us walk in today carrying someone else's pain. Could be a child. Could be a spouse. Could be a friend. Could be a diagnosis. Could be a burden you can't fix. I want to say to you that you are the centurion today, where you are coming to Jesus on behalf of someone you love. Humility and compassion are just the beginning. Later on in the story, we see that Jesus offers to come to the centurion's house. But the centurion says, "Stop. Lord, I am not worthy for you to come under my roof. Just say the word, and my servant will be healed." If that is not one of the greatest statements of faith in Scripture, what is? Now, this is coming from a man who understands authority. When he approached Jesus, he didn't approach him with entitlement. He didn't list his accomplishments. All the centurion did was acknowledge reality. You are holy. I am not. Humility is the doorway to faith, but humility alone isn't what amazes Jesus. And see, the centurion understands authority, and this is where he shines. The centurion, he lived and breathed authority. He knew what it meant to give orders. He knew what it meant to receive orders. And he knew what it meant when someone with greater authority spoke. So when he looks at Jesus, he sees something that the disciples were still trying to grasp. He's saying Jesus doesn't just have authority, he is authority. The centurion is saying, I operate with borrowed power, but you operate with inherent power. He recognizes Jesus' authority is not limited by distance, it's not limited by geography, and it's not limited by rituals, it's not limited by proximity, and it's not limited to physical presence. Because this centurion knew and understood that when Jesus spoke or speaks, creation obeys. And then he says a line that echoes throughout. Just say the word. It's not try something. It's not come touch him. It's not come see him. Just speak. Because the centurion believed that Jesus can work from a distance. He can heal someone who isn't in the room. And some of us, myself included, struggle to believe that Jesus can only heal someone who is in the room. But the centurion says, you are not limited by geography. You know, a couple of years ago, or maybe last year or so, our school had a substitute teacher. This teacher was new to the ecosystem. She walked in, took attendance, and unfortunately said the 6 most dangerous words in education. All right, class, you can work together. The moment the class heard those 6 words, chaos erupted. Desk moved, papers flew, someone actually started beatboxing, and someone else tried to microwave a Pop-Tart that they didn't have. When I heard this, I just stepped into the room. I didn't have to say anything. I didn't raise my voice. All I did was stand there. And the room got quiet. The room went back into order. Why? Because they weren't responding to me. They were responding to the authority I carried in that space. Now, if a middle school teacher can shift a room from a doorway, what do you think Jesus can do from heaven? If my presence can settle a classroom, what do you think his voice can do in your home, in your heart, in your situation? Jesus marveled. He was so marveled that he stopped and said, that right there, that's what faith sounds like. What else did he say? He says, he has not found faith like this in all of Israel. Not among the religious leaders of the time, not among the disciples, and not among the people who grew up with Scripture. That's stunning. Where faith doesn't come from the inside or those who know the Word. That faith came from an outsider. Church, faith is not about proximity to religion. You can be around Jesus and not trust him. Faith comes from unexpected places. Sometimes the people that we expect to get it don't. And sometimes the people that we overlook gets it. Here, Jesus expands the kingdom vision. He says people from the east and west will sit at the table with Abraham. What's the real translation to today's world? It means that the kingdom is bigger than you think. And faith is the ticket in. Then the miracle happens where Jesus says, go, let it be done as you believed. And at that very moment, the servant is healed. Here we see that Jesus' words is not bound by distance. Jesus doesn't need to be in the room. There were no disciples in the room. There was no ceremony in the room. It was just a word. And from miles away, life returns. See, the centurion's faith blessed someone else. His servant never meets Jesus, but Jesus meets him. Church, Jesus' authority is absolute, and his word is enough. So, if Jesus walked into your life today, into your home, your work, your marriage, your fears, what would amaze him? Church, it's not going to be your resume. It's not going to be your accomplishments. It's not going to be your spiritual track record. What would amaze Jesus is this: trust. A heart that says, Lord, I don't need you to do it my way. I don't need you to show me proof. I don't need you to come to my house. Just say the word. At this moment, church, I want you guys to bring one situation to mind. That one place where you need Jesus to work from a distance. It could be a child. It could be a diagnosis. It could be a relationship, a fear, a wound, a prayer that feels like it's echoing. I want you to hold it before him. And I want you to whisper these words. Lord, just say the word. You know, during World War II, there was a group of families that gathered every night around a small radio. Their sons were fighting overseas, and the only connection that they had to them was a crackling broadcast that came through at unpredictable hours. One evening, the radio crackled to life. A faint voice whispered, Mom, Dad, I'm okay. I can't tell you where I am. I can't tell you what's happening, but I'm alive. And before the signal cut out, the last words spoken said, don't stop praying. In that moment, the room erupted in tears. Not because there was war, but because a voice from far away had reached them right where they were. And if a fragile radio signal can cross oceans, what do you think happens when Jesus speaks? When Jesus speaks, distance collapses, darkness trembles, healing outruns fear, and what is far becomes near. And today, Jesus is still speaking across miles, across years, across broken relationships, across hospital rooms, across addictions, across silence. His words still travels. His authority still stands. And his voice still reaches. His power still moves. So bring him your distance. Bring to him your worry. Bring him your impossibles. And bring him your too far gone. And just whisper the words that amaze Jesus. Lord, just say the word. So church, let us all stand and sing Faith is the Victory.